Hello. I'm the boss. How are you? Good, thank you.
I love the G7 for one reason and one reason only. It always leads to hilarious moments for President Donald Trump while making all the other world leaders look small and deflated in comparison. Like, who remembers this one?
Together very well. I look forward to that. The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago.
And there's more from where that came from, so we'll take a look at what really happened at the G7. And side note, I'm surprised we're even still in the G7, considering that we've slipped way out of the 7 top-ranking economies in the world. But while Carney was busy not getting anything done, back home the Liberals were passing a motion to ram through Bill C-22 come hell or high water. Democracy be damned. So what actually happened? Further back home, one of our extremist politicians had the audacity to publish a disgusting post that caught the attention of the world. It's so ironically bad that I actually had to do a double take to make sure it was real. My name is Ali Daniel, and this is The Right Call. Like, share, subscribe, hype this video up. Any interaction on this channel helps push the truth out and maybe someday break that CBC-induced coma that so many Canadians are under. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button, because if you like the truth as much as I do, you found the right place. Man, what a start to the day. I've been trying to record this video now for a few hours, but we had a low storm over Montreal, and that was enough to throw the entire infrastructure of Hydro-Quebec into disarray, so power outage. Anyways, pray for me that we get through this report. But for now, the US has been warning us about crime at our border for quite a while. And if you recall last year when they called us out for that crime at our border, Canadians got up, riled up, got offended, got mad, and we went full elbows up apparently. Well, it turns out it wasn't false, because Trump's Homeland Security chief says pressure on Mexican cartels is indeed pushing crime to the Canadian border, which led to our Minister of Public Safety, Gary, to tout the impact of Canada's border security plan over the past 18 months, saying that it has brought significant reduction in irregular migration and drug trafficking to the US. So which one is it, Gary? If we did not have a border problem, then why are you touting the impacts of your plan to reduce such a thing in the first place? Turns out you lied to us, and the Americans were right. And Gary goes on further to say that he acknowledges there's room for improvement on communication between Canadian and US law enforcement, but cited several high-profile cases where there has been cross-border cooperation, including the capture of accused drug trafficker Ryan Wedding. So once again, vindicating what the US has been saying about our border for over a year. The truth always comes out. But the priorities of our Minister of Public Safety is not so much on securing the border as we've seen. He rather pass laws to spy on Canadians. But don't take my word for it, although I've been raising red flags now for many months. Take it from a tech expert.
There is growing backlash against the federal government's proposed lawful access bill. Joining us now to talk about the concerns around Bill C-22 is tech analyst and journalist Carney Levy. Good morning, and thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you, Sonia.
All right, so give us an understanding. What exactly are the concerns around the lawful access bill?
So the worries here are that it lowers the barrier for law enforcement to gain access to critical private information, and that it allows the Minister of Public Safety to order technology companies to weaken protections like encryption, include backdoors, require telecommunications companies to hold on to metadata for a period of up to a year. And metadata is, if I send you an email, the metadata is all the it's not the information inside the message, it's all the information around it. So what date was it sent? Time, where was I, my IP address, who sent, who received, the type of message, tracking information. That information on its own can be somewhat damaging if it falls into the wrong hands. And the concern here is that now the barrier has been lowered for large amounts of that information to be held on all of us, and that could potentially be used in ways that would compromise our privacy, compromise our individual security. So, it sets off privacy alarm bells in the interest of public service, but of course that violates individual rights.
And it's always in the interest of public service. That's the one major flag people should just discard right away. Whenever the government says this is for your benefit, just assume they're lying to you. Look at the merit of what they're trying to do rather than the words they're trying to use in order to make you believe it.
And does the legislation outline in which cases the government or authorities would be able to access people's metadata through this bill?
I think that's part of the problem, is that it is deliberately vague and it really doesn't outline the case. It says that law enforcement would now need what's called reasonable grounds to suspect, which is a looser requirement as opposed to the previous reasonable grounds to believe. So it's almost like a fishing expedition. They could just collect information on everybody, put it in a giant pile, and then go through it and see what they're looking for. So it removes, almost feels like it's removing the presumption of innocence from that process. And it means that all of us, regardless of whether we're adhering to the law or not, are subject to this level of mass surveillance.
And I want to highlight a point he did not touch on that much, and it's breaking encryption. It will force tech companies to implement backdoors into their systems, meaning the government will be able to read encrypted, secure messages. There's no more privacy, there's no more hiding, and the government, under dubious claims, especially lower threshold, legal threshold, will be able to access your information, your conversation, your chats, and pretty much everything, your entire life history that happens online. And I'm not okay with that. I don't like the good old, if you ain't got nothing to hide, you don't got nothing to worry about. It doesn't work that way. It's the opposite. The government has the onus, the burden to prove that you're doing something wrong in order to access what is privately and rightfully yours. This is why we have a Charter of Rights and Freedom. But in order to avoid more scrutiny, the Liberals decided to pass a motion preventing further debate and forbidding further amendments to be added to the law. Because, of course, nothing says this is good for you like shutting down the democratic process and avoiding debate, right?
What the government is proposing to do here, this piece of paper outlines all of the steps that will be taken in order to get this legislation moved. It says that the committee is going to meet within 1 hour of the adoption of this order in order to get clause by clause done. I know we're a bit in the weeds here for folks who don't follow parliamentary procedure, but hang with me. If they haven't figured it out in 30 minutes from the beginning of the meeting, all remaining amendments that have been submitted by 4:30 shall be deemed moved, and boom, 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 all the next steps to just whip this thing through the House of Commons. What do you make of it all?
This is actually very dangerous territory, particularly given the subject matter we're talking about, giving police and other authorities increased powers.
And that's another great point. If we're going to violate so radically people's chartered rights, then it needs to at least have some form of debate and oversight, which the Liberals are deliberately avoiding, which to me is just enough to know that this is not okay. Even if I was not super pro-freedom and liberties, which I am, I would say, wait a second, why are you trying to avoid accountability? Something insidious is at play here.
Something that if you're humble enough, you know you're probably not going to get it exactly right in the first time. It gets challenged, it gets applied. It's too strong here, it's too weak here. To have an order that says all of the details of this bill will be passed within 30 minutes is frustrating to those that want this thing to work, that want police to have the right tools and also want the privacy of Canadians to be protected.
And this is where I diverge from this individual due to the fact that I don't want the police to have more tools to spy on us. I think they have plenty enough. This is not a law issue. This is an enforcement issue. Police are being handcuffed, literally, with their hands behind their back and prevented due to political motives from going after criminals, because that would shine a light on a lot of piss-poor policies that have been passed by the Liberals. That's the issue. The issue is not, oh, we need more tools to spy on Canadians. It never was. So keep that in mind.
We used to say this in opposition, and I know government would get frustrated, but we say a lack of planning on your part does not create an emergency on ours. You have to know if this is an important priority, then you have to set aside time to make sure it happens. If the opposition are dragging their heels and causing chaos all the time, then fine. There's times where you have to push. I'm not sure that that's true on this bill. And I'm looking at the raft of bills, Catherine, that are sitting or have just been introduced. It's a little cynical because what the government will say 6 months from now, 8 months from now, even though they haven't had any parliamentary time, is that people have been looking at these for 6 and 8 months when really they brought them in at the last minute and said the clock is now running. So I'm a bit frustrated because these bills matter. They're very, very important to Canadians, and they're probably going to get them wrong, especially if there isn't much in the way of scrutiny or pushing back on the original ideas the government proposes.
Well, one thing I do agree with him is that the government will get it wrong. The Liberals have hardly ever gotten anything right over the last decade, and it's only getting worse and accelerating with this new manufactured majority. Now, Prime Minister Carney was in France because the G7 was happening in Evian. And oh, have things changed since the last administration. Oh no, I'm not talking about Canada here.
Hello, I'm the boss. How are you? Good, thank you.
little bit of a little bit of humor to start the G7. God, was it something under Biden? I feel bad for that guy. I really do. A lot of people on my side have no remorse for Biden or no sympathy for it. I feel bad. This man was so gone, so far gone. He should have been put out to pasture a long time ago, but yet, you know, the puppeteers behind him kept him in power. I feel bad. For me, it's elder abuse. But anyways, the big topic happening at the G7 right now is actually not on the agenda of the G7. Rather, it was a hot mic moment that Carney was caught in while speaking with President Trump. So it's really hard to hear right there, but in short, Carney was caught saying that less than 3% or 49,000 cars were the amounts that we were importing from Chinese EVs, and that it was a cap, a hard cap that we put in place. And then he goes on to say, I thought you'd like it. I thought you'd appreciate that. I thought that this was what you wanted. To that I say, I guess everyone has to check in with the boss once in a while. At least that's how it sounded to me. But the mainstream media spun it differently, since, you know, the goal is never to say the truth, but rather to spin a story.
I think it's less about what was said and more about what the body language was, which actually seemed they were pretty comfortable with one another, right? Like diplomacy happens behind the scenes, right? Over dinners or those conversations when the camera isn't on. And I actually thought that they looked pretty comfortable with one another. It is helpful for sure that Dominic LeBlanc was there to, you know, clean up at the scrum afterwards and bat everything so eloquently away.
So eloquently away, of course. Thank you, Dominic LeBlanc. You are such an amazing representative.
But I actually think that Canadians should take it as a good sign that they were chatting, that, you know, there wasn't a lot of anger. Like, just...
This is how far down we've slid, by the way. Canadians should just be content with the fact that the Prime Minister of Canada was chatting with the President of the US. This is as far as it goes. We should just be happy they had a conversation. How pathetic, how far we've slid down. Long gone are the days where a Prime Minister would just grab the phone and call the President and deal with it directly. No, instead we should just be happy that for once, after a year we've had a talk. After a year we had a chat. Oh my God, such an accomplishment. We're setting the bar so low.
Reflect on back what those scenes used to look like with Trudeau, right? The kind of almost being barreled over, or the bad handshakes, or the complete ignoring. So
it's funny they say that now. I'm sure that's not the speech that they had pushed to Canadians back in the Trudeau days. They probably said that he was so eloquent and Trump was intimidated by Trudeau due to his elegance or something. I don't know. Wow. Crazy. Well, again, the truth always comes out.
I think that this is, you know, a good sign. And also I think that, you know, the issues that it raised, you know, today around Jolie's visit to China, and also the conversations that were going on with Greer that LeBlanc spoke to today in his scrum, kind of promote, you know, Carney's strategy of going two ways. We want the diversification. We want to access China's market, but we're also going to continue these, you know, deliberate and ongoing conversations with the U.S. to see if we can also secure access and increase our access there with the U.S. market.
Oh, so we want access to the US market finally. Okay, my bad. I thought that we had a rapture, that whatever relationship we had with the US was gone, never to come back again. Now, apparently, we want it back. These people flip-flop worse than a carp. But when asked about why Canada hasn't had any bilateral trade discussions with Trump while at the G7, you know, probably like the most pressing matter that Canada really is facing right now, Carney had that to say.
I wouldn't take a big message from that. I had 7 or 8 discussions with President Trump over the course of the last 36 hours. I'll have more today, a wide range of subjects from the economy, relations, his birthday, artificial intelligence, Ukraine, obviously Iran. The aspects of the deal and the next steps there and how Canada can help. And good discussions with the president. So I wouldn't take a big message from it.
Marky Mark, where is the trade deal? Because what strikes me here is the nonchalance that he's exhibiting. He's got all the time in the world. Who cares about getting a trade deal? By the way, we're approaching the 1-year anniversary of the deadline that he set for himself on getting a trade deal, which means we're 1 year overdue from getting a trade deal come July of 2025. But are we surprised when we hear the truth, or at least the narrative, coming from the other side of the coin?
We do take notice of when we watch the opening of the World Cup in Toronto and Canadians boo the American flag. Really? 85% of your trade from the U.S. and across the border still comes across the border tariff-free. You have the second best trading relationship with anybody in the world, of any country that the United States has trade relationships with. We have $2.5 billion of commerce going across the border each and every day. We are fighting on fentanyl, on crime, and all of these kinds of things. Very sadly, it was a week ago that a Toronto police officer lost his life, going after some criminals, some serious folks that may have had something to do with the attack or the shooting at the U.S. consulate. That's the kind of partnership that we have in law enforcement and the military and these kinds of things. And you're going to boo the American flag? I think when the sound system and the singer lost her mic in Buffalo, and the Canadians were playing the Buffalo Sabres or whatever, Americans started singing.
Yes, I remember that.
They started singing the Canadian. Anybody who touches defense recognizes the partnership that we have formed over the years.
This just goes to show the mental, the emotional, just the ideological capture that Canadians are under. The liberal mind virus has taken over every strata of society. We're at a point right now where we do this, and of course it's being noticed by the Americans, and you think it's helping us? You think this is any good? And meanwhile, the Americans are actually being class acts and singing our national anthem. Same thing happened at the White House during the UFC event a few days ago. To me, it's pathetic at the point we're at now. Nearly as pathetic as this little gem right here. I forgot that we were super outraged at this.
Canadian people, myself personally, are outraged and horror at the attack overnight on the Kyiv Pechesk Lavra monastery, which is yet another symbol of the brutality of Putin's regime.
Outrage, I tell you. Outrage. I am so mad. I'm so outraged. I guess it's time to send them another $24 billion. You know it's coming. This is the setup for another package of billions of Canadian dollars going to Ukraine, namely probably to be saving the Ukrainian nuclear power station that Brookfield has a contract with. Of course, and yes, to buy Zelensky another great mansion in the state of Florida and abroad in other countries. Yes, we're outraged. So outraged. So while Mark Carney was pushing his net zero agenda, presumably in the G7 and Evian doing his thing, Pierre Poilievre was working overtime back home to push back against it.
Dazzling overseas speeches and fake agreements won't put food on tables, money in bank accounts, or gas in tanks, nor will $200,000 on in-flight catering. Mark Carney has made a club of liberal insiders, lobbyists, and corporate power brokers fabulously rich, while making everyone else poor. The illusion of Mark Carney is now colliding with the reality. He's been wrong on every major issue. Wrong on pushing carbon taxes, wrong to write in his book that we should leave half our oil in the ground, wrong to testify against pipelines to the Pacific, wrong to predict that COVID would lead to declining prices and deflation, wrong to support money printing deficits that led to the inflation crisis.
And you know what? He's right. Not only is he right, but this entire net zero narrative, again, we talk about it all the time, but it is BS. It's BS. This is how BS it is. Carbon dioxide emission by country and region over the years. Where do you think Canada is? What do you think it ranks? We're here, by the way. We're at the bottom. We're at the bottom, behind Africa, Europe, the US, Asia Pacific, excluding China. Oh, and of course, China, which is the world leader in emission, by far, by a lot far. And yet we are castrating ourselves economically and probably societally speaking as well in order to what? Benefit global transition funds ran by Brookfield and the ideologies of a very specific small segment of elites in Canada. This is so wrong, so painfully wrong, nearly as painfully wrong as some of our political elites in Canada that continue to embarrass themselves and show their ridiculous disconnect from reality. Say hi to left-wing nutjob NDP Member of Parliament Heather McPherson, who decided to attack Musk on his great accomplishment of becoming the world's first trillionaire, namely publishing this incredibly despicable X post saying, "Billionaires shouldn't exist. Trillionaires should be in jail. Time to stop the parasitic elite enriching themselves at everyone else's expenses." And then a picture, fun fact, statistically 100% of trillionaires are Nazis. What? Are you effing serious? Disregard the fact that this is actually insulting to any and everyone who live under 1939 to 1945 Germany, even before, at the end of the Weimar Republic. But the fact that you're going to attack this person in such a tone-deaf, you're going to attack Musk in such a tone-deaf fashion, calling him a parasite. So let's take a look at that. Who has contributed more for the welfare and well-being of humanity? Elon Musk or Heather McPherson. Internet access through space to third world countries, that's 1 point for Musk. Electric cars and battery power innovations, that's 2 points for Musk. Space exploration capabilities that no other governments or agencies has ever been able to accomplish, and that worldwide, 3 points for Musk. Neuralink, literally giving disabled people the ability to see or hear or get their senses back again, 4 points for Musk. AI innovation through being the seed funder of OpenAI, which became ChatGPT, and launching Grok, which is now a competitor of ChatGPT, 5 points for Musk. Minting 4,400 new millionaires through employee stock options at SpaceX, some of them being cafeteria workers, factory workers, janitors. Check again, that's 6 points for Musk. Accomplishing nothing in the private sector while pulling a salary from the government, aka taxpayers, well, that's 1 point for McPherson. Yeah, she's the useless eater in my mind. She's the parasitic elite in my mind. To quote Abel's take, being a capitalist was never about defending billionaires or aspiring to become one. It means believing that individuals should be free to make their own economic choices and free to enjoy the rewards or bear the consequences that come from those choices. But again, bearing the consequences of your decisions is clearly a little bit too much for McPherson. She'd rather just post evil, vile stuff online. Now, this is a topic that's very close to my heart and something I've spoken about a lot, but I'm starting to change my tune. Canada's population drops in the first quarter of 2026. More deaths than births and less immigration, says Statistics Canada. Namely, the population dropped by 55,000 people in the first 3 months of this year, bringing the estimated total population in Canada at 41,417,000 individuals. That's a 0.1% drop, by the way. Nothing to rave about. But I used to think that it was such a catastrophic issue for a country to have a plummeting fertility rate. And before diving into this, it's important to note that I still believe that the best outcome is for a country to have a natural fertility rate of 2.11 kids per woman. It is the optimal scenario for a country. Because after all, without proper population replacement, the economy will shrink. And then it's Armageddon. Well, yes and no, actually, and this is where I have a little bit more nuance now after looking into it deeper. The economy will shrink. That goes without saying. But I'm starting to realize that everything in life is cyclical, and you need a cycle for things to be healthy. Take a financial sector bubble. The dot-com bubble, for example. The massive growth led to crazy innovation, but it was way overvalued, and the emotional frenzy was disconnected from the actual real tangible value of the market. Well, it burst. Plenty of people lost everything. But from the ashes, real winners were made. Winners that built technology that improved our lives, and which we still rely on to this day. Google, Apple, Amazon, to name a few. It's a bit like forest fires. It's nature's way of clearing the debris, to clear the overgrowth, and to replenish the soil. Because after fire and after all that destruction, the soil becomes richer and the forest can grow once again at an elevated pace. Well, uncontrolled growth of a country's population is no better. And you know what? The cycle is normal. Will it cause short-term pain? Yes, like big time. Will millennials and Zoomers, Gen Z, suffer? Oh yeah, big time as well. But at this point, our generations are screwed regardless. So we can do what's right for my son's generation and all future generation. We can allow the cycle to normalize. This is kind of controversial, but it has its roots in history. Take the bubonic plague, aka the Black Death, with an estimated 25 to 50 million people perishing in a few years, in about less than a decade. This accounts for roughly 50% of Europe's 14th century population. So yes, this is tragic. This is devastation on numbers that honestly we will probably never experience ever again. However, here's what it led to. Following the Black Death, the catastrophic loss of up to 50% of Europe's population triggered a severe labor shortage, allowing surviving serfs and peasants to command significantly higher wages, often doubling or tripling their previous earnings. This monumental shift in labor dynamics transformed Europe's society and fatally wounded the feudal system. Yeah, take that. It gave new negotiation power to the serfs. It helped workers become emancipated. So can we say that it actually led to liberation down the line? Power, which was concentrated in the hands of the few, all of a sudden had to be shared more evenly. Another great example is that of Ireland. It shocks people when I tell them that today's population of Ireland, which sits at 7.2 million, is less than the population of Ireland circa 1841. There are less people living in Ireland today than 150 years ago, 180 years ago, more than that even. This was due to the potato blight. Basically, it led to a massive famine, plenty died, plenty more immigrated outside of Ireland in search of a better life, and the people who stayed, well, guess what they saw? Yes, tragedy for a very long time. But what did it lead to? Well, today, Ireland's real GDP per capita growth over the last decade tops the OECD at a staggering 70%. Their economy is booming. The opportunities abound, and most tech companies have their headquarters, their European headquarters, that is, in Dublin or somewhere in Ireland, like Cork for Apple, for example. I know it's super unpopular, but we really have only two choices. Either we face economic downturn due to our plummeting birth rate, which will lead to lower asset prices, lower home prices, lower costs of good, lower costs of living, plus increased income over time, and eventually lead to a new positive outlook for our posterity. Or we artificially continue to maintain our population through mass migration, as we've been doing now for a very long time, which will inadvertently lead to the collapse of our culture and the erosion of our social cohesion. Canada will simply cease to exist as it is today. Because if you import a bunch of people that have no attachment, no connection, no history, nothing to do with the country, and you don't give them enough time to integrate and to become Canadian and to pick up our culture, then you've replaced it entirely, and it dies and goes the way of, well, the potatoes in Ireland circa 1841. The only thing keeping Canadian culture alive is the people. That's what culture is. So to me, that option is considerably worse for our future generations. Pain and suffering is coming one way or the other, but only one of them leads to a better tomorrow. Well, that's unless we start having more kids born in Canada from Canadians, but alas, turning that fertility trend around is near impossible at this point. Too much damage has been done. Too much societal change in the minds of our generation has occurred. It probably and sadly won't happen. But you let me know what you think. Since it's a theory I'm still developing and still wrestling with, I would love to hear your opinion. And I read every single comment. So let me know. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I missing something altogether? Looking forward to reading it. Now, if you've enjoyed this report and want to find a way to get yourself involved with the channel, aside from liking, sharing, commenting, hyping, spreading the message far and wide, if you want to take a step further and help economically, financially, in giving me more time to spend on researching and putting out content, well, I have a Patreon. The link is in the description. It's $8 a month, and it helps tremendously. If you'd rather just do a one-time donation, I also have a PayPal link. I've received a few donations from some of you viewers, and every time it pops up on my phone, I smile. I can't believe it. You have no idea how much it's appreciated. And if you haven't seen yet what I meant when I said that the UFC fans sang the national anthem of Canada at the White House and how patriotic that was, I made a video about it. Click right here. It's a great video, although it was damn hard to put out. It got copyright stricken like twice before uploading. I had to improvise last second. It was a pain in the rear. But anyways, for the time being, my name is Elliot Daniel, and I'll see you next report.